Thank you so much. So, it is such a pleasure to have you on my podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I greatly appreciate it. Now it says recording in progress.
Thank
So,
you so much for having me.
thank you, thank you, thank you. So, I was looking at some of your things, and one of the most intriguing thing to me was creativity expert. Can you please elaborate on that? Because that is so intriguing to me. I'm like creativity expert. I've never heard of a creativity expert, but I am all about creativity, so that piqued my interest instantly.
Yeah, I'm a self-dubbed creativity expert
Okay, okay.
because it's nothing that you can get, you know, a license, an official approval from anyone. But
Okay.
they say that like you can become an expert at something if you do something for a certain amount of hours or something like that. You
Okay.
become an expert at it. And it's like, how are you at using the skill. And so I think I believe that I'm a creativity expert because I've been using it for so long, for everything that I do,
Got it.
personally and also professionally. So I do think that I'm an expert in the sense of not just creativity in the artistic sense of I could draw a picture of, I don't know, a moose on roller skates or whatever. It's not that. It's also like, when you're in a bind or you have some sort of, kind of a problem, if you can use creativity to solve it or kind of figure out a kind of an out of the box solution for a situation. So I think that's also that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's understood. That's totally understood. That is
Yeah.
awesome. That is awesome. So, what are some of the things that you've created?
Well, I've been in theater for many, many years, for over 17 years now. I've been creating plays and producing them and directing them and writing them and performing in them.
Oh,
I've done stuff by myself and with other actors, and yeah, and I've done pretty much everything in the production aspect of it because I it came from the need for me to have work and perform. So
mhm.
I did everything else around it in order to make that happen. So I've done everything from, write the play, to sew the costumes, to get the props, to drive the stuff there, to, pull it up, set it, break it apart, lighting, sound, everything. So I've really taken part in all aspects of whatever it is that I do so that I could do what I love to do. So
Hey, that is awesome. So, what drove you to have the passion for theater? What was the that breaking moment that say this is where I want to be?
I don't know if it was one breaking moment, but I mean, even when I was younger and I performed however way you want to say it. If it was with, family, when I do like little funny shits all the time when we get together, or
Mhm.
if it was at school when I would do, like a talent show or anything like that. I thought it was a really cool thing. It's like how some people think roller coasters are cool. Like I don't understand why people would throw themselves in like weird loop de loops and do all that. And people get such a thrill from it and they're so excited from it. I don't get that. But I do get being on stage. Like that is exciting to me. And that, so
Yes.
to each his own. And that's fine. But like I find it exciting. I find it very, very interesting and cool in terms of the performance. And I love being able to make people happy. Like when I'm on stage and I hear laughs, like I'm like, wow, I did that. Like I was able to have
Yeah.
someone become happy for a minute there or an hour or however long. I find
Awesome.
that awesome. And then when I delve when I delve into the work and when I did it professionally, and then you go into, okay, how do you create these characters, and you start learning about people. And so that really fascinated me because it was really a tool for me to kind of understand everything around me and understand people and understand why they do the things they do and where they come from. And, different types of people do different things and how we're all the same and all different at the same time. And it's like, it's really cool.
I love it. I totally love it. And I can relate to you definitely about the stage performances and things of that nature. When I'm on stage, I feel like one, I'm at work. Two, I have to be the best at what I do. If I'm not showing people that this is something that I'm really passionate about, then I feel like I'm not doing anything. So it's tough not to. So I gotta ask you this question because I think that this is
Go ahead.
one of the most empowering questions that I get asked all the time. So I figure I would ask this question to anyone that I interview that has done any type of performances. So, do you still get the jitters before you go on stage?
Okay, wait, you were cut off right when you started the question, so I didn't hear it. So what was the question?
Say, do you still get the jitters before you go on stage?
Yes. But it's like, but that's kind of like it's part of it. Like I think, and I think someone has said this before, like if you don't feel that, that's something strange.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
but it's really for kind of like I think it's for like that it's really intense for that millisecond before you go on, because once you start, it's like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes,
It's not that bad. It's not like this anxiety driven week of, it's not like that. So
that's
it's a
true.
cool thing. It's like, okay, here we go. And it's like, it's an adrenaline pump. It's fine,
It is.
so it's cool.
That is so true. That
Yeah.
is so true. And
Yeah.
I had to ask that because I get asked that question so many times. People are like, "How do you do that? How do you stand in front of hundreds or thousands of people and you're actually spitting poetry? Like, how do you do that?" And I just tell them I
Yeah.
truly enjoy it. That like you said, that millisecond, because that's about how long it lasts. That millisecond
Yeah.
of that intense moment, butterflies before you go on the stage. I mean, after a while, you say, okay, this is a part of what I do. This is what's going to happen before I get started. It's not going to stop me, so I might as well go on out here and do what I normally do.
And everyone's already here and you're already there. You might as well. We're all
That's
already
so true.
here.
That is so
But
true.
there's also, I think that feeling that people don't talk about a lot is that millisecond after, like
Yeah.
when you're done or when you go off stage,
Oh my
it's like this
goodness.
intense high, and
Uh-huh.
suddenly like, oh, I'm done. And then you're like, when do I do it again? It's like, it's kind of like that.
That is so true.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you even brought that up. That is so true. Oh my goodness. So, can
Yeah.
you give
Yeah.
me
And
some
it's
insight
like,
about the
it's this
quasi
great high.
musical? It is. It is awesome.
Yeah.
It is awesome. So, how did the quasi musical go? Because I wanted to actually, I saw something
So I
that may have been advertised about that, and I wanted to actually see that because I've never been to a musical, but I've always wanted to be on the set of a musical. So how was it? How did
so
it?
so a musical is a type of a genre on stage that it's not everyone's cup of tea,
Mhm.
because it's literally a storyline where in the middle people start singing. And it's
Mhm.
not how people are in real life. Like you don't see people in the street suddenly burst into song about their supermarket shopping, like it doesn't happen, even though it should, because it would be really cool, but it doesn't happen. So a lot of people find it very odd to watch that. And so, but if you can get into it, because there are musicals that are, you know, it's not the same type of music. It's like, you know, there's some musicals that have like a different kind of style and rhythm. And it's, if you get into it, it's really cool. It's just cool to see what people do creatively, like visually and
Mm,
everything. And it's a really cool thing. So I've always loved musicals just because, I mean, that was my thing, but I
okay.
am not a singer. So
Okay.
when I created my, yeah, it's a problem. Um, when I created my show, I wanted to, like, I thought of it being like, you know, like, what am I doing with it? But it's made of so many different kinds of stuff. And part of it are songs, but I'm not really singing them like with like a good voice. I'm more like
Mm.
kind of rapping them or speak singing in a way,
Right,
because
right.
that's the way I could do it. So it is a musical, but it isn't, and there is music there, but it's not. So I call it like a quasi musical. So
Gotcha,
that's
gotcha.
how that came up.
But you know what? It's still creative, and as long as it's getting the message across, that's the main point
Yeah.
that really counts. That's the one that counts the most.
Right.
And that's what I always
Right.
say about
And
my
it's, you know,
poetry.
I it's totally it. And I think that, like, I think what ends up, and people say this all the time, but it's really hard to understand it until you do it. But people always say, you know, like, speak your truth and be yourself and it'll shine through. And
Hmm.
it's kind of hard. It's a kind of hard concept to grasp. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? But it's so true. Like, if you, like, if I was, you know, trying to do something that I don't do or that I'm not comfortable with, or if I'm not having fun doing, that's what's
Hmm.
going to shine through. And that's not what
Exactly.
I want. I want people, you know, if I'm having fun, people are watching are going to have fun.
Yes.
And if I have something to say, then people might relate to that. So I think it's also like what, you know, with what you're doing, you're speaking the, like, your truth, but it's more likely than not, it's going to resonate with people, and that's how they connect. And that's how they're like, oh,
Yes.
okay, you know,
Yes.
and they like it. So that's what happens.
That's so true because like actually this Saturday coming, I actually have a Facebook Live that I'm actually doing with my Gentlemen's Club, and it's
Okay.
been so much fun. I mean, I would love for you to be there if you can. It's been so much fun
Yeah.
because I have a bunch of students that I actually mentor. I talk to them, I teach them different things. And this came from me being a school bus driver. And I had so much fun talking to them, and you would think that out of all of the mischievousness and all of the kind of condescending things that the children do, that they're not really paying attention. And it isn't until school is getting ready to let out or a holiday or something that comes around and they're like, oh, I'm so grateful for all this or these things that you said. And then they're quoting back things that you said to them. And I'm like, really? And I'm saying on the inside, like, I
Yeah.
really
It
didn't think you were
seeps
paying
in.
attention.
It all seeps in. Yeah.
But it's great because these are the our future leaders are the main people that I want to reach. I mean, it's not that I don't want to talk to the adults because I love talking to the adults, having the conversations, and especially sharing information that could be relevant to both parties, to me as well as the other person, and vice versa. So I really love that. Don't get me wrong. It's just that when I look at my past, the way that I was brought up, it makes me want to help the future generations even more because I had some pretty dark things happen to me as I was growing up, but I didn't want to see that same thing happen to our future generation of children that are growing up nowadays. So it
Yeah.
intrigued me to actually it inspired me. I meant to say it inspired me to actually be more of a mentor and be more helpful to our future generation and help them to not have to overcome the same things that I had to.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
So,
awesome. Yeah. You always want to have, like, you always want to better, make things better. So that's awesome.
Yes, indeed. So I am interested in inconceivable. This right here seems to be one of your main one of your main topics,
Yeah,
and it seems to be one
that's
of the top things most recent that's happened. Please
yes.
elaborate on inconceivable.
Yeah, that's my quasi musical. It's inconceivable, but the official title is Inconceivable, the totally true one woman semi-fertile quasi musical.
Okay.
It's short and sweet. Yeah, so this is it's it's a solo show of mine. It's actually my first solo show that I've written and performed. And it's also kind of a biographical comedy,
Okay.
if you will. So it's kind of like a different type of show. So I can't really call it, any type of particular genre. So that's why I
Okay.
guess I put that musical in quotes. But um, so it's a solo show, and it's basically a comedy about infertility. It's infertility, for those listening who don't know, is basically problems for people having with conception, with having kids.
Hmm.
And it's, while I've been for over 17 years doing my professional theater stuff of, producing and writing and directing and acting and all that,
Right.
personally, I was going through infertility, and I wasn't talking about it with anybody,
Hmm.
because no one around me was talking about anything like that. So clearly, my husband and I were the only freaks of nature, and we weren't going to talk about that with anyone. So, that's how it kind of this vicious cycle of silence.
Right.
Um, yeah. And then, like, just a few years ago, I kind of said, well, yeah, and a few years ago, I kind of said, okay, I think I'm ready to talk about it, but I didn't really know how. And so
Hmm.
I kind of utilized my theater and comedy background. I was like, okay, I can talk that language. I can use that. And so I
Yes.
literally invited some friends over to my house and told them, come over for hormones and cookies. They had no clue what they were coming for. And and I just told them in my living room, like, all this stuff that I've been going through the last few years, but I didn't tell them like a story. I told them with, like, silly songs and funny characters and all these weird
Hmm.
props. And, like, that moment was, I think it was very pivotal. I don't even think my friends who were there knew how much of an important, huge role they had in that moment, because it kind of let me understand that, first of all, I could talk about it. And then suddenly I saw that other people were going through something similar. They all started to talk about their own stuff. And I was like, what's happening? All these people kind of experience similar stuff, and no one's talking about that. Like, how many more
Yeah.
people are there like that? And
Yes.
then they were like, you have to make this a real show. And I was sure that no one would want to come see it, because, what people woman on stage talking about her, reproductive organs and, and all that. But I did it. I worked on it. I took it on as like a professional challenge to do like my first solo show. And I
Hmm.
worked on it for about a year, and I premiered it, and I thought it was going to be a one night only event, but the response was like insane. People were really, it was really resonating with people. And so that
Awesome.
became kind of like my mission, to be like, okay, I got to have more people see this, because it was being, informative for people. It was being therapeutic for people. It was being,
Yes.
so the comedy was really serving as kind of this like bridge for people who are, inside infertility but don't know how to talk about it, and people
Yes.
outside infertility who don't quite understand it.
Yes.
So that's what I've been doing, and that's pretty much my main show that I'm working on now, because it was pretty much shut down during the pandemic. So
Oh
now hopefully
wow.
it's kind of, I can get back into in-person performances. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I am so happy to hear that. That is wonderful. It's amazing how people like us who actually use our creativity to tell a story. It's amazing how therapeutic it is for us as well
Yeah.
as for our audience. And I think that's something
Yeah.
that a lot of
It's
us don't see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something that, it's like, and it can even be just one person in the audience, or even one word from your one line from the whole show. It's
Hmm.
just that impactful, that it could
Yes.
change someone's day, someone's week, like, and
Yes.
I think that's amazing. And if I'm, doing the show and I know that it helped even one person, or even if I'm, talking to you now and someone's listening, even one person heard
Mhm.
something that is useful for them in any way, that's
Yes.
just everything.
Yes, it is. It is. And it's amazing how a lot of times I don't think that we realize how many doors we've opened for people to actually use their dialogue to tell their story, or to say, wow, I went through some of the same things, even just to get them thinking, get the wheels spinning in their heads. That right there is so powerful that
Yeah.
we don't get a chance to reciprocate from each and every person, but at least the people we're in front of can say, "Wow, you made me actually want to talk about what problems I was having, where at first I was keeping it inside." And that's the
Right.
beauty.
Or even if it's it totally, and even if it's just, not having to talk about it, but just to know that you're not the only one in the world experiencing this, like you've been
Yes.
feeling, which is like what I felt. It's, oh
Yes.
wait, I'm not the only one that did that, and I'm not the only one that had that. And so it's a great thing to just kind of connect people.
Yes, yes, indeed. So at the time, was this a situation that was at the surface, or was it something that you were just basically trying to work through and you didn't want to talk about at the time until after after you had created your performance for it?
Yeah. Yeah. B. I didn't want to talk about it um at all, because I didn't want, again, at the time I wasn't around people who talked about it, so I didn't know how to deal with that. I was like, I don't want people pitying me or questioning me, or like, nudging me, or
Hmm.
thinking I'm this like weird, like, freak of nature. Like, I didn't know, I didn't want to deal with it, so
Understood.
I just didn't talk about it. It was just easier that way.
Yeah, sometimes it seems
And then,
easier.
I mean, but obviously once I did, yeah. And once I did open that door and kind of, uh go with that and say, okay, I'm all into speaking about it. It's just
Hmm.
been like everything's happened that I didn't even expect. I got to meet all these people, and I got to, like, all these paths that I didn't even think were going to happen, because I just didn't, I didn't even think about it. And so now it's just, obviously, besides being like therapeutic and giving me the confidence to talk about it, it's been helpful for others, which has made me, even more grateful that I was like, okay,
Yes,
it's good
yes.
to kind of get it out there.
So even for yourself, has it been um, therapeutic? Has it given you the sense of relief that you need after you talked about it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like right before, yeah, it's because now I'm more open to it, and I think it's been helpful for other people kind of either lay off or ask questions and not
Hmm.
feel like they can't, or so it's been good.
Awesome, awesome. So for other people that may have held it for a long time and not willing to release, or just not ready to release, what advice would you give them?
Um, I would say, as much as you think you have it under control, take care of your mental health, because that is something that I did not prioritize. And I just, I never went to like any kind of therapy, or, I think I was suggested, like it was mentioned to me that there is a group therapy, when we were in the fertility clinic, there's a group therapy going on, but you don't have to go if you don't want. And I was like, I'm not going to group therapy. I'm not crazy. Like, I thought it was just like, because also mental health has not really been looked at as something, like normal, but it is normal because it's part of our bodies, but
It
no one
is.
talks about it.
It is.
And so, but I think it's, if I would have given it more thought, then I would have been like, okay, wait, I got to take care of that, because if, when you don't, your brain is so powerful that it could just eat you up. It could just, you're
Yes.
in this like vicious cycle, and things are like blown
Yes.
up to,
Oh my goodness.
in misproportions. And I think that that's the top thing. I don't think, I'm not going to suggest to everyone to create a solo show and publicly display all of their, emotions and whatnots.
Exactly.
That's definitely not the route for everybody. And I'm not, also not saying talk about it now openly with everyone. But if you can first take care of yourself and maybe even find one person to kind of confide in, just to
Exactly.
kind of feel like, to get the ball rolling, to just get it out, or even if it's on paper or whatever it is, because a lot of people think, no, it's okay, I don't have to, I'll be okay. But your brain does wondrous things, and if you don't take care of it, it can also kind of eat you up. So that's the thing that you have to be aware.
Exactly. So, are those some of the things that when you spoke on inconceivable, you spoke about helping to bridge the gap? Is those some of the things that you were talking about when you were stating about bridging the gap? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of people, um it's funny because when I first started with the show, and then I remember I was doing this interview, and they were like, yeah, so your show talks about, infertility and IVF and things like that, and you say that people don't talk about it a lot, but people talk about it all the time. And I
Hmm.
said, okay, yeah, maybe they do. I mean, maybe, Joe Schmo knows the word infertility and knows IVF, heard it before, but people don't
Right.
understand what that means on the day to day. Like how big of a toll does that take on you emotionally, physically,
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
socially, financially? Like
Yes.
it's a really, these things really take a toll on people on a day to day, on a minute by minute, and it's really hard to understand. So it brings on, misunderstandings and insensitivity, all these other things. But I
Mm.
think that that is kind of what my show is doing. It's kind of being like, okay, this is what's going on for real. I mean,
Yes.
in a funny way, but for real, this is what's really going on. So, because no one's going to tell you this. So here's what it is. It's kind of like in your face, but in like a fun way.
I understand that. So I ask you, is comedy kind of like your alter ego? Is that your other face that you put on in the face, instead of facing certain problems, or is it just a temporary face that you put on until you figure out what you want to do?
Oh no, it's not a face. That's like, that's me. Like, I'm using that as a tool. That's my tool for
There you
everything.
go.
It's
There
like,
you
if I
go.
see something that's kind of like scary, I'm like, what's the funny side of that? Oh, that's pretty funny. And then it kind of dissipates the fear. Or if I
Yes.
see something that's kind of like, making me anxious, I'm trying to see, okay, how can I'm always using the comedy. It's not, I mean, I love using it, in social aspects to make people laugh, or in my
Yes.
shows, but I think it's always a good thing to try hard to see, okay, what is that lighter side of things? Because it gives you perspective, first of all, and it also makes you laugh. So that's a good thing.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Oh, trust me. The reason why I'm asking is because in my case, a lot of times I think of some of my poems that I've done. Um, like for example, the one called "Struggle." In struggle, I actually talk about the various struggles in different ways that people go through struggles. Like, for example, some people may live in the ghetto and they have to be introduced to greed, marijuana, and all types of drugs. And I put that in my poem. And then I also talk about how they quote unquote say that America is one of the greatest countries, but yet there's so many other things that we go through that America either dismisses, don't talk about, or cover up. and refuse to reveal those things. And it's just so many different facets in that, like for people who are dealing with unemployment, food stamps. I talk about so many different things in that poem. And sometimes people figure, because one person asked me the same question, is that my face using my poetry that I would put on, and I explained to them, for me, my poetry is just, it's just keeping it real. It's just making people understand that there is someone out there that can relate to the things that you actually go through. It's not always about me. Like some of my poems I write about ladies. Like for example, I have a series that I do is called For My Woman. And what I'm doing is I give various compliments to women, giving women something to read, something to keep them inspired every day. But it's not about me. It's not about things that I've done. This is what's really on my heart, because love is a huge thing to me, and it's misused, it's misunderstood, it's conflicted. There's so many things that happen.
Underestimated. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Oh my goodness. So many things that happen with love that is unreal. And I
Yep.
talk to my wife about these things a lot of times too. And she herself is sometimes intrigued by how important love is to me and how I view it versus a lot of other guys.
Right. Right. I
But
think
it's
also it's kind of like, you know, there's always that thing of like people's set of circumstances and what they know around them and what they've always what they've learned or what
mhm.
they were taught. So a
Yes.
lot of people, you know, even like you're saying with love, I mean, it's everywhere. But a
Yes.
lot of people were never taught about it, how to deal with it, how to use it, how to not abuse it, you know. So they have what they know, even to
Yes.
express it, you know. So they have what they know, and some people don't know how to express or how to express it right,
Hmm.
correctly, or you know. So I think that's another thing. It's like I think that's maybe what people are resonating with you is like, oh, you're looking at a different way of something,
Yeah.
you know, and that's intriguing.
And one of the biggest things that I find when I'm talking to people about it is a lot of people can't differentiate the difference between love, infatuation, and like. And a lot of people
Oh yeah.
actually equate those to the
Yeah.
same thing. I never thought
Right.
that's what people were doing, but once I became a young
Right.
adult, like in my like when I was like 20, 21, 22, in that age, that's when I started actually being more serious about having a monogamous relationship. And oh my goodness, it was a road. It's tough, and it's you can't even put a profile on it. Like for example, you can't say that it's black, it's white, it's Hispanic, it's Asian, it's this. It's you can't even say that because there are so many people across the world
So
that
many.
cannot decipher what love truly is. And then when
Oh,
they hear
totally.
someone
Yeah,
else
it
say
doesn't,
it,
it really doesn't, it's across all, you know, religions, backgrounds, colors,
yes.
everything. Yeah.
Yes, it is. But I didn't, at
Yeah.
first, I didn't know that. But when I finally came into the knowledge of it, I'm like, wow, this is something I can actually add to the things that I'm already doing. And I think that
Right.
the younger generation really needs to have that tool under their belt, because without love, how do you decipher where you want to go in your future, whether you want to be single or whether you want to be married or whether you just want to have a domestic partner? How do you decipher that if you don't even know what it is?
Right. 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 Yeah, it's very, very difficult. It's, you know, I think it's one of those like kind of life skills that unfortunately we're not focused on at school. But it's one of those things that people should put more focus on.
I agree. I totally agree. So tell me, which order did this happen for you as an actor, producer, writer, and a humorist? So which one came first?
Well, I started officially professionally as an actor,
Mhm.
but I quickly realized I needed to create my own work. I wasn't going to wait around and see how all those auditions go. You know, it's like a typical actor when I started out, the typical life was like, okay, you get an agent sends you to an audition, you go to the audition, you hopefully pass that audition and get called
Oh,
back to the final audition callback, and then hopefully get the role, and then
mhm.
hopefully do well on the job, and then you start that all over again. You know, it's like, and not
Oh my
everything works
goodness.
that way. You don't always, yeah, you don't always get cast, because sometimes you walk into a room with 50 other people that look exactly like you, and
Uh-huh.
maybe, Jane has better connections with the director or whatever it is. And
Hmm.
so, there's so many factors there, that I said, okay, what are the chances of this happening like all the time? When I was starting out, I said, okay,
Hmm.
I can do this, but meanwhile, I want to create my own work. So that's how I started producing, because I figured, okay, if I want to create my work, I have to do everything. I
Exactly.
have to create the show, I have to direct it, I have to physically make it with the set and the props and the
Hmm.
costumes, and I have to book it, and I have to bring it there and take it back. And so I did everything, at the beginning, when I started out. And I was very fortunate to have some people that were kind of going along with my craziness, and were like,
Okay.
I'm like, you want
Okay.
to, perform in this show with me? Sure. You want to help me do this? Sure. And
Yes.
and then later on, I got to meet like professionals who were working in the specific field that I needed, and that kind of like, filled in all those, the pieces, because I wasn't an expert in
Yeah.
everything, obviously. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. We all have to start somewhere. We have to.
Yep. Yeah.
So, how much
Yeah.
time did it take you to actually um, get the exposure that you were actually looking for? How much time did it take you from start to your exposure point?
um Currently, it's still happening.
Okay, okay, that's understood.
It's, from the time, like, exposure is a relative word. Like, when I first started out, like the first shows I did that I created, they were initially set for like this, private booking sector. So it was like I started out with some children's shows, and then I slowly build up to, things for adults. And so, the exposure is all relative, because I'm not, as you don't recognize me as a celebrity, because I'm not at that level. I'm not, like, I'm not there yet, I guess I should say, yet. But exposure, yeah, in our world is pretty much everything, because obviously, the more you're recognized, the easier it is to kind
Mhm.
of make connections and move things forward. So
Yes.
that can be frustrating right now, but I'm still, it's the people that you meet along the way. So to me, I want to do the work, and I want to be able to make some sort of, difference in entertaining people, and helping them.
Yes.
Maybe that's really what I care about. So if I
Mhm.
can just do the work, and if I can get a show so that I can do my job, and hopefully make some people happy and
Yes.
learn something, then it's great. I don't, the exposure is a nice side note, but it's not the main thing. Like, I just want to be able
Exactly.
to do what I like to do.
Exactly. That's understandable. So, out of
Yeah.
all of the messages that are conveyed through your work, what's the biggest message that you want to get out there to the people?
Um, well, I think it all kind of ties into, this concept that goes with yes and, which I'm sure you may have heard of from improvisation. I don't know
Yes.
if you've heard of this, the foundation of yes and. So if you have any listeners that don't know, that's basic foundation of improvisational theater, which is basically unscripted theater.
Hmm.
For people who've seen maybe like Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's a nice little reference if they know that. So it's
Yes.
basically, you're given just like a scene or characters, and then you're set off to create something, but it's not scripted. You just have to make it on the spot. And the concept in order to make that work is something called yes and. So basically, whatever you're presented with by your partner, you have to say yes to it. Not the actual word yes, but you have to kind of go along with it.
Right.
Because if you don't, the scene dies and then everything stops and nothing happens and it's boring.
Yeah.
And so you have to go along with it. And then you have the and part, which means you also have to contribute something of your own, so that essentially you can make the scene move forward. So if someone says, hey, let's go climb that tree, and you're like, we're not, there's no tree here, we're on a stage, whatever, then you killed the
Yes.
scene. But if someone says, hey, let's go climb that tree, and you're like, yeah, sure, I brought a parachute along, and then when we get to the top, we can, like, shimmy down and glide down the air, whatever. Like, you already moved the scene forward, and you already created this whole other story,
Right.
that potentially could be funny or not, or entertaining or not, but it moves forward. So if you take that concept and you use it in real life, it's a great tool, because it basically means that, whatever opportunity you're presented with, and almost everything could be looked at as an opportunity, you should, say yes to it or go along with it,
Right.
so that you can move forward. And then you do your and you contribute of yourself, it'll move things forward. So it's kind of
Yes.
like how you and I are speaking right now, because one
Yes.
of us approached the other, and the other one said yes, and the other one said and that's how we're
Yes.
here now, which I think is like super cool. So
It
that's,
is. It
that's
is.
how things are working, and it's something that you can really apply to life. And I always say, with the caveat of, use some common sense. If someone is approaching you and saying, hey, let's do crystal meth, don't say yes. It's, you have to use a little
Exactly.
bit of common sense, obviously.
Exactly.
Not everything, but, so it's that. But that, I think, is the concept, because I think, I've applied it to everything I've done, whether I was aware of it or not.
Right.
Because, it's like when I was telling you that I started out as an actor, and then I said, okay, I got to create my work. How do I do that? And I was presented with this thing, maybe I should create my own work. And I didn't say no. I said, okay, yes. And how do I get this moving forward? And then it all
Exactly.
kind of propelled from there.
Yes. Yes.
So that's kind of like, I think, the main concept that could be a useful tool for people.
hmm I've always been happy that I learned the yes and theory, period, because it means a lot. It means a lot to pretty much everyone that does anything performing, entertaining, anybody that does anything to the public or for the public, that it means something different. And I just think that it's
Yeah.
an important factor to keep in our lives, something that you definitely want to keep in your pocket. Like, hey, don't ever let this go. Keep this with you wherever you go. It's
Right.
that reassurance that say, hey, don't forget this.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's kind of like, it's a way for you to, it's literally what you said. It's a great tool to have, and like, be reassuring.
hmm So one of the bigger questions I have is, apparently you're not afraid to fail. So, being that you're not afraid to fail, what are some of the things that you felt that you failed at, and what did you want to do differently?
Um, I think it takes a while because, again, of how we've been conditioned over the many, many years, but it takes a while for people to understand that failure is not a bad thing. Failure is how we learn. And, it's kind of like, as a human, when you're a baby, you don't automatically know how to walk. And when you do
Mm-hmm.
start to walk, you don't automatically walk smoothly. You fall and you trip, and you just, got to get up, and then you figure out, oh, it's one foot in front of the other. Oh, it's the, balance, all that. So it's kind of like that with everything. There's not usually not anything that you can do that immediately you're, proficient in and an expert in. It's something that you kind of have to fail and learn your way to see what works and what doesn't work and improve. And it's
Very
just
true.
how we are as humans. And I think it's something that we need to understand. And I've failed like many a times. And as a bit of a perfectionist, it hurts more to me when I fail, because I'm like, how could I, how could I do
Oh
that?
my
But
goodness.
it's yeah, but it's a little, yeah, but I take it, I take a step back and I'm like, okay, wait, what can I learn from this? Because usually, what you learn, it's always a learning opportunity, because everything is a learning opportunity. And then you can like figure out how to do better and how to improve.
Right.
So, I mean, I can give you like a pile of failures that I've had that, I've learned from. But there's just so many. It's like, anything from, you know, a format of a play that I tried to produce, to a line that didn't work and then I made it work, to shows that I've done performing for one person that showed up. Like there's so many that what you could call failures, but they're like they're learning opportunities. It's all learning opportunities.
Yes,
It's all a
indeed.
good thing.
Yes, indeed. So the bigger question would be, did you see your improvements? And after seeing your improvements, what did you feel after that once you saw it?
It's just like anything when you're going through a sort of learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
You see, okay, you see that what you learned and what you applied works, so you want to keep doing that, because then the
Yes.
learning curve keeps going up. Like it's like, oh, okay, I got it. And then there are
Mm-hmm.
also all these other things that maybe are unexpected that kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
you know put a
Yes.
spoke in your wheel, but you kind of figure out how to, get around that, or how to do. And that's again where the creativity comes in, because it's helpful if you're not boxed in, and then you can be like, okay, how do I creatively solve this problem? How do I creatively learn from this? Or what can I do? And not all lessons are like minutes, some take much longer.
Yes.
But it's still that it's still, learning and improving, and which is, what we all should be doing, I guess.
Yes. Yes. So, are there some of your events that are just completely surrounded around comedy, and some that are just completely surrounded around acting? Or is there any time where the two are not mixed together?
If I ever do something that is not comedy,
Mm-hmm.
I have done very few things that are like proper dramas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice, like again, as a learning thing, to see that I could do it, or to learn about the characters or the situations.
Yes.
But I much more enjoy the comedy and the humor, because I enjoy the reaction that it causes, that it makes other people happy. Like,
Yes.
the world, like you said, the world is, I mean, so sad and challenging as it is. Like I
It
like that
is.
even more, even though I know that it's making people introspective and learn or whatever. I love that it can lighten their day too. So I love to go to humor.
Yes, yes. Well, it shows that during our creative moments, we are picking and choosing, not because this is what we're good at and this is what we're not good at, but it's just like you stated, it's a learning curve for one, and for two, it's something that shows, okay, this is where I'm better at, so let me stick more so to what I'm good at rather than to try and do something that I'm not good at, and then looking at myself epic fail and all of my hard work just pretty much say goodbye. You did
Right.
all of that for
Right. Yeah.
nothing.
You want to just, right. You want to just use it to see how you can improve.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, in in your line of work, what are do you actually are there actually any books and things of that nature that you actually read while you're doing this, while you're learning more about what you do?
If you were cut off again, if there are any books.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Are there any books that you use while you're learning? Because let's say, for example, someone else that's listening may want to reference to something. Is there anything that you would suggest that they reference to?
Yeah, I mean, when starting out as an actor, obviously there are a bunch of books like while you're studying that, I've read. And there are other books that I've read, kind of like for information and for fun. But yeah, the internet is also a great resource because I research a lot. So if I'm researching about a certain character that I'm going to play or a topic I want to know more about or anything, I read a lot, but usually online, not just one specific book, just because I also like to see different sources.
Mm,
And online is just easier to get access to a bunch of different kinds of sources. So I usually do that. So I read a lot online about whatever it is I'm doing, and I'm quite a I'm quite a nerd. So like I really like to do, doctorates on these things.
uh-huh.
So like I really research.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah. So it's like I get into this like kind of obsessive mode of like, wow, I want to know more. Or sometimes, while I'm on this like rabbit hole of information, I go into down a whole other rabbit hole of like, oh, and I go into here and I learn other things. And sometimes creatively it's cool because it gives me an idea for something else. So yeah, I do research, and I think that's a good tip for anyone going into this. Even in creativity, it's like just see what's out there because you never know. First of all, the stories are really interesting, and second of all, you never know what it can inspire you. You may go in with an intention of doing A, and then you leave with Q. So like always see what's out there.
You have a very wonderful personality, I must add. I
Thank
love
you.
it. I love it because my thing is I like to be humorous. I like to be silly, especially when I'm doing interviews. It kind of not only breaks the ice, but it also sets the mood. You don't want
Right.
people to be all intense and say like, "Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
this is pretty cool. Yeah, you want
Yeah.
to answer the
Yeah,
question?"
totally.
You don't want people to be too intense.
Right.
But uh, so have you met your doppelganger? Because I was looking at your about.
Um, so I apparently have, that's because I apparently have doppelgangers like all over the world, because you don't understand how many people have asked me over the years or told me, are you so and so, or are you related to so and so, or you look just like so and so. So I'm like, okay, I just guess I have, stunt doubles or like doppelgangers out there. And so I just say that now. I'm like, no, that's my stunt double. Or I'm her stunt double, or whatever.
You are so
I
not
guess I
alone
just
in that.
have, some people have a certain face. I guess I just have that face that looks like someone else, which is cool, I guess. It is what it
Well,
is.
honestly, looking at you and looking at your picture, uh, looking at you here on the video, you actually look like the lady, because I don't know her name, the lady that played 13 going on 30. You actually look like her.
That is a huge compliment. Jennifer Gardner, she's gorgeous. Yeah, thank
Yes,
you.
she
I don't see
is.
that, but if you see, I think that's what it is. I have this face that kind of like, oh, it's her. It's not. It is or not. I guess that could be useful for something.
My some of the people have asked me, especially when I was doing a lot of working out. They would ask me, it's like, are you related to Brian White? Are you his cousin or something? I'm like, no. No, I don't. I'm not. Not that I know of. If there's anything in the bloodline, I don't know. And I
But I
just
think
laugh.
it is. I mean, look, there's so many people in the world. I mean, it's inevitable that some will look a little bit like others, and I think that's actually really cool.
That's true. That is true, and it is cool. It is very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how many workshops does it take for you to finally come up with an actual theatrical play or your whole scene that you're doing?
It depends. Yeah, it depends. I mean, I've done productions where it's been like several months from idea to the stage, and I've
Mhm.
done others where it's been a year, and I've done others where it's been a bit longer, a bit shorter, depending on also necessity sometimes, like I've even
Yes.
been in a position where I've like been commissioned to create something, so I would have a deadline and I'd be like, okay, I got to make it happen. Or sometimes you have other constraints that you have to take into consideration. So it really varies.
Hmm.
And also if I'm doing other things intermittently, then I can't, do everything all at once.
Yeah.
So the time is kind of done differently. But yeah, it takes, I would love it to be shorter because I love the process, but I like the doing the end
Finished
product.
project.
Like
Yeah.
that's like yeah, the finished project. And to me, like when it's finished, it also kind of just gets started. Because once you add that element of the audience, then it
Hmm.
takes on this whole new thing.
Yeah.
And like the shows evolve from there too. Like you're like, oh,
Yes.
wait, that doesn't actually work anymore. We got to change that. Or, hey, we got to add a bit more of this. And those are things you
Hmm.
don't really see during the process before it goes, to the public. So I
Yes.
love
Yes.
that part actually too. So
So on the average, if you had to put it into an average, how many hours would you say you spend on a particular project?
It really depends. It depends on so many factors, like how many people are involved in this production,
Hmm.
how big it is. I've also created like a full-on stage musical with I mean, at the time, to me, that was my biggest cast. I had, I think, 11 people in the cast, which is a lot more than I was used to. And
Okay.
that took a lot because there's a lot of coordination and a lot of other things to be considered about. And there were a lot of, production issues and things like that. And then
Hmm.
there's the show, my most recent one, which is a solo show. So, like, production wise, that was much easier because it was just me. I didn't have to, worry about other things. So
Right.
I knew what to consider. Yeah. And I knew what to consider on stage because I didn't have to ask anybody. It was me. So I was like, oh, can I do that? I can do that. Okay, check. Like I didn't have to
Hmm.
go through certain processes. So the timing really, really depends on a lot of factors.
So it wasn't a lot. It wasn't more work doing the solo than it was doing it with multiple people. But
In many ways it was, and in many ways it wasn't, because
okay.
the logistical and technical aspect was easier because it was just me. There were a couple of other people involved in the process. I
Hmm.
had a fabulous dramaturg who's a dramaturg is someone who helps like just kind of hone in the text. And I had an amazing stylist working with me to kind of figure out the look on stage.
Hmm.
And so I was very fortunate to work with them. But again, it wasn't the same type of work as when everyone else is involved in a
Exactly.
big production. So that was easier. But there were other things that were harder, like, okay, how do I convey this very, horrible topic in a funny way? Or how do I say that in a way that would
Hmm.
not affect this? And, so those things are kind of challenging in their own way. So,
Gotcha.
every thing has its own thing.
That's understood. That is totally understood.
That was a very non-intellectual way of explaining that, but everything has its own thing.
No, but anyone who understands the type of work that you do, and I understand some of it. I understand a lot of it actually.
Yeah.
We would actually get where you're going with that, and it makes perfect sense. It really does, because
Yeah.
without the other bodies, without the time constraints, without people having not show up, and then some show up late, or even the ones that show up on time, do they have any personal issues that they're dealing with? Can we, push that aside? Some people can, some
Exactly.
people can't.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot to endure, and there's a lot of factors that go into that, so it's
Right.
definitely understandable.
Right. Right.
Well, it's gonna shut off us on us in a bit. I definitely had a great time with you. I truly appreciate you. If you
Yeah. Same
would please
here.
share websites or social media sites where people can actually reach out to you and learn more about you and participate if possible.
Sure. The easiest to access me online is through my website, which is meiravzur.com, meiravzur.com. Or on social media, I'm much more active on my account that I created for Inconceivable. And so those accounts on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok is the handle Inconceivable Show in one word. And on Twitter, it's Inconceivable because it was too long. So it's just Inconceivable SH.
Yes, yes.
Um, but through my website, you can also access that much more easily, and you can contact me through email there or through social, however is easier. And I love to get in touch with people and respond. I'm very responsive because I love meeting new people through this. So it's I'm happy to get in touch.
Yes. And this has been one awesome interview. I truly appreciate you for being a guest. I greatly appreciate it. And you just don't know
Thank you. Thank you so
how
much for
much
having
you
me.
help. You're very welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And I truly want to say that you please keep doing what you're doing, because you are truly an inspiration, not only to people that are in your field, but also to people like me who do poetry. I know that there are different things that we go through, different things that could put a pause or a stop or a slow down on what we're doing. And you showing the fortitude that you show to keep going is very inspiring, and I truly appreciate you. Thank you so much. Please keep going.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. Thanks so
Thanks a
much.
lot. Hey, you have a wonderful day. Thank you again. Peace and blessings to you.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.